Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Today I have special guest Hayley Ringle back on the show with us. Welcome to the show, Hayley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. So, for those who may have missed the first time Hayley was on the show, Hayley is my best friend from Phoenix. We grew up together, well, sort of, I mean, middle school. And Hayley
Junior
and I
high.
have, yeah, junior high. And yeah, back then we didn't have, well, there were middle schools back then, but now I don't think junior highs even exist. Anyway, so Haley and I have watched lots of movies together over the years. She's a huge movie fan. We have really different tastes sometimes, but also sometimes very similar. So I invited Haley back on the show because it's awards season, so there's a lot of exciting stuff out. So we're going to be talking about four movies today, and two Haley picked and two I picked to review. So we'll get started with our first movie, which is Nomadland. And after her factory closes, a woman embarks on a journey living in her van as a nomad. The character Fern is played by Frances McDormand in an amazing performance. And this is the third feature film by director Chloé Zhao, who I just am becoming a huge fan of. I saw her first film, Songs My Brother Taught Me, fairly recently when it was on Criterion Channel, and I loved it. Her second film, The Writer, won tons of awards at the Independent Spirit Awards, and we reviewed it on Real Film Snobs back in the day, and it actually was in Brian's top 10 of that year. And this is her third film, which has already garnered a lot of awards. One of the things that she does in this film, and she's done in all of her previous films, I think really successfully, is she blends non-professional actors with professional actors. So almost every single person in this movie is a real nomad, is a person that lives this lifestyle of living in their van or their trailer or their car. And with the exception of Frances McDormand, David Strathairn, an actor I've loved for many years, who was in Good Night and Good Luck, among other films. There's a couple other professional actors, but for the most part, all the people Frances McDormand is interacting with are non-actors. And to me, it gave the movie authenticity, but also I just really wanted to even hear more of these people's stories. Some of the people she meets on the road are really fascinating, and she has these great little conversations with them, but then she sort of moves on. And there were a few times where I thought, oh, I wish we could kind of stay a little longer with that character because they were really interesting. I'm really anxious to hear what you thought of it, Haley.
Yeah, I loved it. It was such a beautiful film. I was really excited to see it because I'd heard so much about it. Obviously, it's getting so much buzz. And I had seen the trailer. I didn't know if you have seen the trailer where it's literally
Mm,
just her walking. And I'm
yeah.
like, that is the weirdest trailer ever because it's like it says nothing about the movie. So I was definitely intrigued. Obviously, Frances McDormand is usually in, some pretty great movies. To me, it was like a documentary because it
Mm-hmm.
was so real and we were just following these people. And obviously we did have a lot of these actors who weren't real actors, they were just playing themselves, so it seemed like you were just watching a documentary on a nomad. So I
Right.
really like that kind of aspect because I love documentaries. Every character was so real, but then when you see the credits at the end, you're like, oh, because these people, they're just playing themselves. So I love that authenticity.
Yeah, I did too. And in her previous films, the director also did that. Although in that case of the writer, it was all non-professionals. She didn't use any actors, but it was still a fictionalized story. I think here, obviously we have a much bigger star, Frances McDormand, so we're not, it immediately indicates to us we're not watching a documentary. But I do think she blends in pretty seamlessly and interacts really well with the nomads. And one thing I was really glad to see about the movie, because based on what I'd heard about it going in, I was worried it was kind of, and I like movies that are kind of, social issue type movies about class and poverty and those types of things, but the movie isn't so much focused on that, as more as her personal journey. I mean, there a lot of the people that she meets along the way are nomads for different reasons, and it's not always because of poverty. In some cases it is, and it certainly seems in her case that's one of the things that's driven her out on the road. Her entire town literally doesn't exist anymore,
Yeah.
which is something someplace she's lived her whole life, with just about her whole adult life with her husband, and then the entire town is wiped off the face of the earth when the factory closes. So but some of the people she meets is just because they had different reasons. One woman, a coworker had cancer and died, and she realized her life's too short. I want to see the country. I don't want to be stuck in a house. Different people have different reasons for it, and I really appreciated that aspect of the movie. It is gorgeous too. The photography is beautiful. It's shot on location in different places around the West, including the Badlands area, which is also where she shot her previous film, The Writer. So I really enjoyed it. I'm actually a little surprised it's getting so many awards, and not because it isn't great, but because it's such a subtle movie. Sometimes award shows like the Golden Globes or the Oscars tend to go for things that are a little showier. And Frances McDormand here, her performance is very subtle. I mean, there's no big, huge moments where she has a crying, screaming fit, or there's none of those big Oscar moments. And so, but it's also been kind of a weird year for movies, obviously, with theaters being closed. So I think this movie probably really spoke to people. I mean, the fact that she's out on the open, out in nature, that's something people can, I think, relate with right now. A lot of people, that was their escape during the pandemic, right, is to get out in nature a little bit. So
yeah, I have a feeling there's more, this speaks more to people, because I know people who are nomads. I know somebody who sold their house, or stopped their lease, and they just live in an RV, someone who's younger than I am. So I think
really?
I think more people are doing it because you can work remotely anywhere now. People aren't in an office anymore, so I think a lot of people are taking advantage of it. So I think it's a perfect year for this to come out, because for whatever reason people identify with it on different lengths. And with me, I grew up, both my parents are hippies, and it's very much kind of like a hippie lifestyle. And so I kind of identify with that a little bit, because a lot of the people I'm like, oh, that would have been like my mom's friend,
Yeah,
like,
I actually thought of
these
you
people.
when I was watching this. I thought of some of your experiences in your childhood with your mom in particular,
Yeah.
and going to the desert in a van or that type of lifestyle. I thought, oh, these are people like Hayley's parents would have known. So, and they've just
You
sort
didn't
of
go to a
continued
nudist farm when you were young?
No,
Was it
I
just
did
me?
not. Yeah, it's just you. It's just you.
So so this was, I identified, and I'm used to being around people who were kind of different. And so these are characters, and you have to kind of my boss saw this movie, and she's like, I'm like, what do you think? And she was just like, it was really sad. So
Yeah,
some
I didn't
people,
really
and
think it was really sad, actually. Did you find it sad? I mean, in parts, but
yeah, I definitely think it did, because I felt like she was always searching for something. Obviously, she no longer had a home. Her husband died. She was, and you kind of wanted her to, there was kind of a brief romance, like, are they going to get together?
yeah, although I was glad it didn't go where I thought it might there. And I'm trying not to give anything away, but
But
yeah.
you just felt like she was looking for something, and you wanted her to find it.
Yeah, but we're not really sure what it was exactly. I mean, I think it was that sense of home. She does have opportunities. She has an unfortunate economic situation, but she has a sister who obviously has money. She has this, other, potential romance. So she has opportunities to put down roots, and she chooses not to. And like you said, it's that element of searching, which I found really interesting. But yeah, I really loved it. I could highly recommend it. Definitely, I think worthy of a lot of the awards praise it's getting. So.
And it'll be interesting. Oscar nominations come out on Monday, so be
Yeah.
interesting to see. I have a feeling most of these movies we're talking about will get some kind of Oscar nod.
Right.
Or
And
not,
this one
not the
probably for
last
sure
one, but
because it won,
yeah.
because it it was won the Golden Globe, and I was nominated for the BAFTA for the British Film Awards, and so, which is interesting because it's a very American movie in a way. So anyway, so I think the next movie is yours.
Yes.
To introduce.
So the next one is a movie that a good friend of mine suggested, who is a film programmer, and he programs a lot of Hispanic movies for the Latin market. And so he said it was one of his favorite movies of the year. So I'm like, okay, I have to see it. So I'm No Longer Here, which is directed and written by Fernando Frias de la Parra, which is on Netflix. It's about a young street gang that spend their days dancing to the slowed down cumbia music and attending parties. And unfortunately, they live in Monterrey, Mexico, and it's a very violent town. They have a local cartel. And after the main character, Ulysses, is involved in this kind of crazy scene, he's forced to, leave and grab his family and, kind of hide out for a little bit, but then he has to migrate to the US. But it kind of goes back and forth with what happens in Mexico, and then kind of his new life in New York. And, he doesn't speak English, and, it's a lot of back and forth. And so it was definitely, I liked the movie. I thought it was a little too long. I thought they could have cut it. They could have edited it in some parts. And it kind of like Nomadland, I felt like a lot of the actors, I think the main actor is not, like a professional actor. So you kind of felt like you were just hanging out with these kids, listening to their music, and they all wore these very baggy clothes, and they had this very unique hairstyle. I read an LA Times article that described it as shaved, gelled, tufted, highlighted, and sharply banged, because it's just like a weird hairstyle that you've never seen before. And all of the kids had it. So I love that, because I love fashion and I love music, and it was really interesting to see them dancing, because to me, It was very reminiscent of Native American hoop dancers.
I thought of that too. I thought about indigenous dancing.
Yeah, because they were low to the ground and they were kind of going around. And
Right.
I'm here in Phoenix, and we have the Herd Museum. We have a lot of reservations around us, so I've seen a lot of hoop dancing, and it really reminded me a lot of the hoop dancing. I
Yeah.
wish I like the main character, but I felt like he needed more of a personality. At times, he was so quiet; he didn't talk a lot, and I really wish there was more to him. Um, I guess the director is known for that HBO show Los Spookies. I think it's you say it. I haven't seen that, but I've
Sort of a
heard good things
horror thing.
about
Yeah.
it.
And I haven't seen it either.
And
Yeah.
also on Netflix, they have a little. It's like a 15-minute thing where they talk to Guillermo del Toro and Cuarón, and they talked about how they love the director and kind of it's such a good movie from a relatively young writer and director. And so I love that they're excited about it because I love both of them. And and I have a feeling it will get nominated with the Oscars. I know that I think it was Mexico's official
Selection.
international. Yeah.
It could be,
So
although this is a tough year. There's a lot of good international films this year, so it's going to be
yeah,
a tough one if it gets nominated. I really liked it. I wouldn't give it 4 stars, but I give it 3.5, which is pretty high, especially considering it's really a feature film debut. I'm really excited to see this director do other films.
mhm,
Couple things. The photography is amazing. He's just got an amazing eye. I
yeah,
thought a lot of the scenes in Monterey, the way he captured not just the dancing, but just the street scenes and the streetscapes were just gorgeous. I loved because I didn't know anything about this scene. I know cumbia music, which is more from South America. So I thought it was bizarre. I'm like, do they know they're in Mexico? And there's a great scene where he meets this woman at a bar in New York City when he's up there, and she's from South America. So he
Colombia.
tells, yeah. And so she says, and they call their scene like Columbia, but with a K. And so she says, what kind of music do you like? Because he says, oh, I hate this music. They're playing like hip hop or something. He's like, oh no, it's Norteña. And he's like, I hate this music. And she says, she says, what kind of music do you like? He says, Colombian. And she says, I'm from Colombia. That's a country, not as music. And then he tells her cumbia and he plays it. She goes, yeah, this is okay, but it's like slowed down weird. So it's like they've done this whole thing. They've created this whole scene, kind of bringing in parts of South American culture. And like you said to me, the dancing seemed really reminiscent of indigenous music, and then put their own thing on it. Because I don't know where the hair and the outfits came from. The baggy clothes kind of reminded me almost like 90s hip hop. But this is supposed to be set in like the zeros, I think, around 2010 is when it's set. And so I thought that was really interesting. So they melded all these different influences. The thing that to me was really poignant is that in his hometown, he's kind of like the leader of this group. He's a known entity. He's a mini rock star. It's kind of a big fish in small pond type of thing. Then he comes over to America, he doesn't know the language, and he doesn't fit in with the other immigrants who are there either. They don't understand his scene, what he's about. Like the only bar he goes to that's sort of like probably the bar where a lot of Hispanics go, like you said, is playing Norteña music, which he hates,
Yeah.
or ranchero music, which he hates. I mean, so he has this very specific scene that he isn't finding outside of his town, and so he's completely alienated. Um, he is a really hard character to get into, like you said, because he's very passive. He just kind of lets things happen to him. For a while there, he's sort of trying to find work, but he kind of just wanders around. I think he's just sort of like without this one thing that he had. It was sort of like he had this one interest, and without that, he's like he has no grounding. He has no. It's like
And
he's without a compass.
he's very quiet. He doesn't say a lot in the movie. A
Hmm.
lot of times he just listens, and even when he was in Mexico, he didn't really talk a lot.
That's true because he was always dancing though, right? But and his group wasn't, even though they were a gang, quote unquote, they weren't particularly violent, and so that's what's really tragic is what he sees, as the movie goes on, what's happening to his
Yeah.
hometown, and
Yeah.
so the I'm no longer here part of the story really resonates on multiple levels for both places, and so I think it's really exciting. I think as a director to watch. I actually thought the actor Juan Daniel Garcia Trevino played Ulysses. I thought he was really, even though he doesn't say a lot, I could see why they picked him. He had a real presence, like you just couldn't stop looking at him,
Yeah.
and so I'd be excited for him to do more as well.
Well,
So
I
a
think
good
a lot
find.
because of his hair, because he was so interesting looking.
Yeah, well, even there's that scene where he's working, and then some white guy comes up and wants to take a photo of him because he's just like, what an interesting looking man. But he's like,
Mhm.
doesn't speak the language, so they're like, can't really communicate what's going on. So,
But now
um,
that I think about it, that was very similar to when he was in Mexico because he would go out dancing and girls would go up and they're like, "We want to get a picture with you." So he was used to like posing for pictures and people coming up and saying, "Can I get a picture of you?"
yeah,
So
and
I
he
thought that
loved
was
it. He loved
interesting.
the attention. He would smile
Yeah.
and pose and immediately go into his style. And
They all
so,
have these like crazy gang signs they do, and they have, they call themselves Los Turcos, and so
Turcos,
it's
yeah,
kind of like a young club. I mean, I hate to call it a gang because they weren't violent, and it's more like a group of friends that it was
right.
kind of like a dance group. Like they would go, they had a lot of scenes where there was a local radio station, and the radio station would do all these shout outs, and they would shout out all of the names of the little different groups and stuff.
Hmm.
So it was more
Yeah.
of kind of a group of friends who all kind of embraced this different type of music and fashion.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. And again, I'm so angry at Netflix. I have to just, my rant about Netflix is that I didn't even know about this movie till you mentioned it. And then when I selected, I'm like, this would have been right up my alley. They pick up movies, they buy movies from film festivals or wherever, and then they don't market them. They always market the new Adam Sandler movie, the
Bridgerton.
Halloween one he did, or Bridgerton, but they market the same
Mhm.
things over and over again. But they pick up these award-winning movies. On the previous episode I reviewed with Brad, The Wasp Network with Penelope Cruz and Gail Garcia Bernal, and I didn't even know it was on Netflix. And it's by an acclaimed director, and it was another one that they had picked up, and they didn't promote at all. So I mean, this never came across my like, you should watch this now, So
You just
it's
have to.
frustrating that they pick up these like art house movies and then they don't promote them at all.
Well,
So
I think there's so many movies on there that,
yeah, but
I
they
mean,
don't
it's
have that
crazy how
many
many
good
movies they
movies on
have.
Netflix. They have a lot of TV series and things, but you would think, especially ones that are winning awards and getting some critical acclaim, and especially based on their algorithm, seeing the stuff that like people like you and me watch, you think they try to
Yeah.
push it out rather than thinking I'm going to want to watch Hubie's Halloween again or whatever. So that's just my thing with Netflix and all those Adam Sandler movies they're always pushing. But anyway, definitely can recommend it. So
Well, I love all these movies are coming to Netflix. Nomadland was on Hulu. Obviously, since we're, all, well, Angela's in lockdown. We're not. We're 100% open.
yeah,
But you really haven't been. People have not been going to the movie theaters to watch these movies. That's why they've been streaming. So I love that you
right.
can watch them now.
Nomadland
So
is now our local art house theater just reopened, and Nomadland's one of the ones they're showing along with
okay,
Minari. So
good.
I'm pretty excited about that because it's definitely a good big screen movie, I think.
Yeah,
So if you can get to a theater and you feel safe doing it, I would recommend it. But in the meantime,
definitely.
it's nice that we have options for those of us who are still stuck at home.
So
So
I mean, I think there's Netflix has way better movies than Hulu. So
that's true. Yeah. But they're purchasing. No, they have good movies, but it's just more that they have a huge marketing budget too. And I feel like they put all their, eggs into one basket with like, their stuff that's already popular or the Tiger King or whatever the newest thing is that they're promoting. So
mhm,
anyway, so we'll move on
yeah.
to the next movie, which is yours, I think.
Okay, so the next movie is Judas and the Black Messiah, which is on HBO. I was really, really excited about this or for this movie. It's about FBI informant Bill O'Neill, who infiltrates the Illinois Black Panther Party and is tasked with keeping tabs on their leader, Chairman Fred Hampton. The main character, O'Neill, is played by Lakeith Stanfield, who I've loved for a long time. He's in a lot
Oh,
of great movies,
love him.
and he's really gorgeous too, so that
Yeah.
helps. Um, and he kind of walks a fine line as he is an informant for the FBI, but then he is also, kind of a high up. I guess he's like a security IT guy, kind of in this, Black Panther group. And the chairman is played by Daniel Kaluuya, who is also fantastic. You probably know him from Get Out. And it is it's crazy with these movies because you feel like they could have been made yesterday, which is kind of, this was made back in the 60s when J. Edgar Hoover was an FBI director and he was kind of on a rampage. Racism was very rampant. And, a lot of the stuff we're dealing with now, I think it's just more,
More of the
you
same.
know, it's a lot more of the same, but, at least, I mean, I'd like to say there's some differences. It's not, I don't know if we're really getting, the police aren't really like bombing, their, when they went into their, the
Building.
Black Panthers building and, kind of like set it on fire. So, so I did like it. I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to.
Mm,
I think because I felt like it was a little long. I think it could have been edited a little. I thought Lakeith was fantastic. I thought Daniel Kaluuya was fantastic too, but there were times when it was hard to understand him.
mm.
He talked really fast and kind of low. Um, but I thought he was really great as Fred Hampton. I know there's several movies, that portray, Chairman Fred Hampton, which, it's crazy to know they were only in their like early 20s during all of this, which is
Yeah,
crazy.
really young. Fred Hampton was
I
21
mean,
when he died,
yeah,
which is
it's so
insane.
crazy. And so, I wasn't familiar with the story. And so obviously it tells the story of, him and obviously his untimely death. So I did like it, other than it being a little long, great characters and, lots of great actors in this movie.
I loved this movie. This is a 4-star movie for me. So I loved it on multiple. So one thing I just want to say, the music and the photography is fantastic. So I'll just get that right out of the way. Just like all the pieces, the music is really well chosen. This is Shaka King, who directed this, only did one other film before this, and it was something I'd never heard of. So very another filmmaker that's coming out of the gate, you know, with very few films under his belt and just doing an amazing job. I thought Daniel Kaluuya was fantastic. I always forget he's British because in every movie I've seen him in, he's
I
always
know,
doing
it's
an
weird.
American accent. And then when I see him on
Those damn
award shows,
Brits.
I know. And whenever I see him at award shows, I'm always like, oh, because it always takes me aback a little bit.
Mhm.
I think the performances are great. I was familiar with Fred Hampton, but not all the details. And so this was fascinating to me. And to see how articulate he was at such a young age, and he's able to arouse people. And that what I found fascinating, his strategy with the Black Panthers, particularly in the Chicago and Illinois Black Panthers, was to bring these different groups together that all basically had beefs with the police, including
Yeah.
kind of a group of all white people that are kind of like poor white people. And he talks to them and says, we have more in common, you know, than we have apart. And I found that so powerful, especially in this day and age, you know, with
Mhm.
everything that's been going on with the previous administration. And then the way the groups that they're involved in are labeled as terrorist organizations, which we could definitely see today with some of the moves to characterize Black Lives Matters and Antifa as terrorist organizations by the previous administration. So I think that was really poignant as well. And I, you know, if I had a critique of the movie, I would say that I would have, and this would have made it longer, so that would have been a problem. But I would have liked a little bit more background about Fred Hampton and Bill O'Neill, actually, like who they were, where they came from, you know. And Fred Hampton has one scene where he tells his girlfriend about, you know, his back, you know, where he tells about his childhood and seeing Emmett Till murdered and how that had a huge impact on him. But especially considering how sophisticated his politics seemed at a young age, I would have just loved to see more about how that developed in him as a person. So, but although it's not really a biopic of him, so which is sort of maybe I guess what I'm wishing for, it's more about this, um, as the title implies, this betrayal that he suffers at the hands of Bill O'Neill. So I also want to give a shout out to Dominic Fishback, who's in this film, and she plays his girlfriend in the movie. And she's an actress I love. She's been in quite a few David Simon series, including The Deuce, and then she's been in some independent movies since she stopped working with David Simon on TV. But I'm a big fan of hers. Whenever I see her in films, I get really excited. And she takes what I think is kind of a typical girlfriend role and makes it her own. And there is a coda at the end of the film. And actually, when you watch this on HBO, it has some extras on there, including interviews with Fred Hampton Jr., his son. And so I watched some of those, and that's really interesting to watch because they were advisors on the film. The wife or girlfriend, I guess they were never married, but and his son were advisors on the film.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. So, and I could definitely see why it's getting some awards. I think Daniel Kaluuya won the Golden Globe for his performance. He is really powerful. I'm glad to see that Get Out wasn't, you know, I mean, he's done some other things since Get Out, but I'm glad to see that he's still getting good
He's still getting out.
roles. Yeah, he's still getting out. He's still getting good roles, you know. So, and I'm with you with Lakeith because I'm
Oh,
big fan of his acting and his whole being. So, what shall we say? So, is this
what
more
was
like a
that?
3-star?
Yeah, what
Oh,
was that
sorry.
movie he was in? I'm trying to remember that really weird
Sorry to
where
bother you.
yes. Oh, that was so good. And
Yeah,
obviously I love him in Atlanta.
yeah.
So you know, he's just so good.
Yeah, he's not always in every movie I've seen him in isn't always amazing, but he's always, you know, fun to watch. And he was in Get Out as well with Daniel Kaluuya,
That's
the
right.
smaller role, but it was nice
Yeah.
to see them reunited, very different roles, obviously. So
Mhm.
yeah, so
So
would
yeah,
this go to
I really liked it. I would probably give it 3.5 stars. I just didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie, which is Possessor. From 2020 by Brandon Cronenberg. We originally were going to watch a different movie on the show, and I couldn't get access to watch it because I'm a cheapskate and I didn't want to spend $20 for a streaming rental. And so I suggested this one because I actually saw it in quite a few critics' top 10 lists,
Mhm.
surprisingly. And it's a horror movie. It's sort of a horror. It's a sci-fi horror movie.
Mhm.
And I know Haley and I both enjoy horror, so I thought I'd
Yeah.
suggest it. It's about a corporate assassin played by Andrea Riseborough who uses brain implant technology to execute high-profile targets. Movie's directed by Brandon Cronenberg, and if that name sounds familiar to you, that's because he's the son of horror auteur David Cronenberg, and he does have a
Mhm.
lot in common with his father, including a love of gore and blood and lots of squishy scenes.
Mhm.
I have to say, I picked this one, and I am apologizing in advance if you did not like it, Haley, because I did not like this movie.
Oh.
I was really disappointed because I went into it. I knew that even the saying the plot line, it doesn't sound very original, and it's not. As I was watching it, I was like, oh, I feel like I've seen this movie before. You know, this kind of idea of like a corporate assassin coldly having to, you know, take out targets, and you know, there's a little bit of the twist with the way they do it, but to me, that wasn't that interesting. The characters are not that well developed, and it's not that scary. So it's very gory.
That's scary.
It's very gory, but it is not
I didn't think it was
scary to
very
me.
gory.
Well, there's a few scenes. I mean, this is, I think I watched the uncut version. Apparently there's a rated R version for whatever reason as well out there. Maybe wherever theaters are open, it showed there. But
Yeah.
the opening scene is, you know, a little gross. And I think there's some full nudity, which is probably also the uncut version. But she takes over this. The main plot of it revolves around this one particular target that she takes over the body, and then they basically have a struggle for who's going to have control of his body, and she starts to lose herself. The part that I really was confused by is that this character, Andrea Riseborough's character, has a husband and kids in her personal life, which ends up becoming a major part of the plot. So I'm not giving too much away. You kind of know that up front. That seems very odd why you would pick someone to be a high profile assassin that has baggage like that. Usually in these kind of like assassin thriller type movies, they pick a woman or a man who doesn't have those kind of roots, because, and you see why. There's obvious reasons as you're watching it. So I'm curious what you thought, Hayley.
I liked it, but I definitely thought it was very confusing at times. They did need to go kind of more into the characters. I love Christopher Abbott, who played the guy that, she was infiltrating, the
Oh
main.
yeah, I didn't know. I mean, he looked familiar, but what is he in a lot of TV?
He was in Girls.
Oh, okay.
And so he was in Girls for I think half, maybe a season or two, and then he quit to do movies. So he's been in a lot of movies.
Yeah,
and I
thought he looked familiar, but he's
him.
not like a starring. He's more like an actor that I was like, oh, he's been in a lot of stuff.
He's in a lot of indie stuff, and so I love him. So when it was him, I'm like, ooh, because to me he's like the perfect looking man. It was creepy, but it was mesmerizing. I did like. To me, it's more sci-fi. I wouldn't really call it a horror. It was very sci-fi. It was interesting, but yeah, it was just kind of weird and kind of meandering at times, and then the ending was just like, I was like, what? It was, so
yeah, I can't recommend it, unfortunately. So I'd give it like 2 stars, but it sounds like you liked it. Okay.
But the problem with horror is a lot of horror is not good. And it's just like, you just have to like the thrill of it, because you're never going to give like a horror movie 5 star. I mean, I can't say never.
Well,
there obviously are.
Get Out.
But I mean, the majority of horror movies are more about the gore, about the scary,
Right.
So
but I guess this one just
more thriller.
It didn't scare me, so maybe they should have just not called it a horror movie, because I went in thinking I'd be spooked and I wasn't. So and I got a little bored.
I did like the sci-fi aspect, and I do like Jennifer Jason Leigh too. It was cool to see
in
her.
a small part. Yeah, she looked a little odd though. I was a little worried maybe she'd had something done to her face, but anyway, I almost didn't recognize her, so that's always a bad sign. So it sounds like you can barely recommend it. So I'm getting the sign.
Yeah, but the Possessor, if there was a different version, I saw it on I think Netflix, right? And so I don't know if I've watched the actual uncut version, because it just said Possessor.
Yeah, I watched it on Hulu, and I think it. I don't know which version I watched, but maybe.
I don't know either. Okay.
But anyway, so thank you for being on the show with me, Hayley. I really appreciate it. It sounds like we can both highly recommend Nomadland. I think that was the big one from this week. I'm no longer here. We can both recommend. I think I was maybe a little higher on it than you. Judas and the Black Messiah. I was a little higher on that one than you as well. And then Possessor, you're a little higher on that one than me. You can recommend it. And I'm like, maybe pass.
Yeah, I think I would recommend it to people who like the horror sci-fi genre.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Hayley, for being with me again. Hopefully you can come back again.
Thank you.
It was fun having you. And as always, you can check out our show at realfilmsnobs.com. We're on Twitter and Facebook, CCTV, Scan TV in Silverton, Corvallis Access Media, KMUZ Radio, and we've just been added to KMWV FM in Salem. Thank you to all of our sponsors, our fantastic crew in absentia, and Brad for taping us. As always, have a great day and great movies.
Bye.